Your old mate each way Albo. It's a climate emergency, but we won't get around to it till 2050. He sits there with David Spears and doesn't fight any of the costs. A CSIRO report says $1 trillion to replace the energy network so it can deal with renewables, both taking and giving from the network. The BCA, $660 billion every the total cost, $22 billion a year every year till 2050. It's across the entire economy, be it agriculture, be it transport, be it energy. I will simply ask you this question. Have you seen something inside some secret Labor polling that is any different than the polling that saw less than 50% of people are willing to pay for this drastic action? What's changed numerically and inside the party? Not ideology, not Twitter. What is the electoral evidence that is any different going into 22 than was there in 19 and 16?
Well, look, I think the full impact of the bushfires will change some opinions on this. Do I think that there is a majority of Australians willing to back Labor's suite of policies going into the last election if they were to take similar policies going forward? Absolutely not. The Labor Party has to win seats in Queensland, it has to win seats in Western Australia if it wants to win government. It cannot take to the next election policies that are simply got the support of inner city Sydney, Melbourne and a little bit of Brisbane. That is a recipe for defeat.
So is this policy that recipe for defeat times 12?
Look, I mean, only if it means defeat for the South Australian Liberal government and only if it means defeat for the New South Wales Liberal government. Both of those are signed up to this policy, and I've seen Mr Barilaro, and I'm admiring his capacity to oppose his own government, in which he is the Deputy Premier. I think that is a magnificent... Peter Beattie has got an acolyte in his ability to oppose his own government, even though he was the Premier. But joking aside, there are two major state Liberal Party governments who have made the point and made the case and support the policy. So I think there is a change in some degree of sentiment. Do I think that if Albo doesn't spend the next couple of years, and it would be insane if he tried to bring out a policy too much before the election, but he needs to develop thoroughly a set of policies that show both a climate change edge, but where Labor has been failing is not doing enough to support regional and rural Australians in Queensland and in Western Australia. So he has got to have a balance of policies that talks about what they're going to do to improve the lives of people in regional and rural Australia. And that doesn't mean we're going to close down your coal mines and we're going to let you be people who work in hotels. There's nothing wrong with that, but my point being, if you want to transition coal miners and the families that they support and all the townships that they support, you cannot do that.
But if you drive a truck, you can go jump.
Minds.
If you own a truck, go jump. If you're involved in agriculture, we'll tell you how many head of cattle you can have. I mean, James, this is the whole thing. Where the problem is that, as Stephen knows, from a political perspective, all right. When Gillard decided to set the carbon price conversation and then she took negotiations into closed doors, a vacuum was there, which meant Tony Abbott was able to fill it and punish them in 2013, apart from anything else. We're now in a 30-year vacuum.
Well, that's the thing, Paul. Everybody out there, except for the Canberra bubble class, knows that this is a nonsense. We are talking about stuff that will...
Including, by the way, the South Australian and Liberal Party governments as well.
Exactly, and Matt Keane and Blacksburg-Gigley and everybody in New South Wales as well. This is all stuff that is not going to hit its deadline until most of the people are, if they're lucky, in their emeritus years, writing their memoirs and teaching at the universities. Why are we not talking about the real stuff? If you want to talk about climate change, talk about mitigation, talk about preparation, talk about hazard, and talk about, if you want to talk about energy, talk about nuclear. I mean, these are the things that people want to talk about, not just say we need to get to zero, because you're telling a lot of people in a lot of electorates that we're going to keep having that May election over and over again, because we're just going to keep saying you drive a truck in the mines, you work in the mines, you have a job that's dependent on this, you're not going to have a wage that can support a family on that anymore because, hey, sorry, you're a climate criminal.
Well, I mean, Labor, be happy because Albo, if he's Prime Minister, will be Prime Minister when all this, you can check on the 2050 election, he'll be 86 years of age. But don't worry, Bill Shorten will still be stalking him, he'll be 82 years of age and doing the numbers on him. Pauline, look, what I love about this is that if you question the cost, you are somehow denying the science of climate. If you talk about the impacts, you are somehow, again, denying the need for transition. BS. Australia signed up to Paris, we're doing our bit, all right? If people think that's not enough, then okay, but show me the evidence that 50% of Australians are willing to pay more. And by that I don't mean $10, because the modelling required to get there shows that it's a lot more than $10.
That is correct, Paul. If you cast your mind back to the May elections, when Bill Shorten was asked these questions, how he was going to cost it, he couldn't answer the questions. And you know, that's exactly what Albanese is doing now. He's not costing what he's proposing to the Australian people, and he's pushed it right out to 2050 without looking at what has happened today with the big companies, the smeltering companies now are saying, look, we can't afford to run in Australia anymore because we're now running at over $100 million loss. And they're saying, well, electricity costs are forcing us out of the market. It's the same as a lot of industries and manufacturing that I've spoken to. They're now trying to make a decision, do they stay in Australia with the escalating energy costs? And we have to be smart about this. We're allowing the Greens and the elites with their own agenda, pushing this on the Australian people and fear-mongering, because that's exactly what it is. We've never really had a good debate about climate change and put the facts on the table from the scientists. It's all about fear-mongering. So until we have that, I'm saying to Australians, please look at the facts, because this is going to mean whether you're going to have jobs for your children, are you going to have a decent standard of living and a way of life? Because other countries around the world are powering ahead. They're putting in their coal-fired power stations. We're shutting ours down, and we're supposed to head down with renewables, that solar and wind power, that cannot give us the power that we need. So we have to be smart about this. We can have a balance of both, look at the coal-fired power stations, then transition into renewables over a period of time. But we're going to destroy our own economy and our own jobs.